Herkese iyi günler diliyorum.
I would like to wish you a good afternoon. So we are proceeding with our third session. Welcome to our third session. So we're in the third session of Turkish Wind Energy Congress, and in the session we'll be talking about investor experiences. Of course, in such congresses we are face to face with delays. So for this reason, to gain time, we have just 1 hour. So for this reason, related to general wind energy, I won't make my introduction so that we will save time, and then I will give the floor to the panelists, and they will be talking about their experiences as investors. So when we look at the form of our session, our panelists will have 10 to 15 minutes, and then there will be a Q&A session. So this is the form of our session. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Agah. He is the CEO of Borusan Holding. So he was born in 1957 in Istanbul, and he graduated from English male school, and he also graduated from Birmingham School, and in Birmingham, in London, in Jersey, offices of the consultancy office. He worked for the offices in these cities, and also he has the degree of charter accountant, and again he worked for Emlak Bank financial department, and now he is the CEO of Borusan Holding. So he first served as a financer, and then he worked for the human resources and coordination. In the year 1995, he became the general manager of Borusan Holding, and he has serious experiences in the field of wind energy. Now I would like to give the floor to you, Mr. Agah. Okay, Mr. Undersecretary, I'm very thankful to you. So, among such masters, I am having the first say. So this is something good for me, because for the other colleagues also, we are the newest ones in terms of energy, wind energy, and I am not the direct responsible. So for this reason, I am learning from the indirect ways, and rather than an expert, I have an investor perspective, and I would like to talk about our journeys, outcomes, outputs. So Borusan Group is a 68-year group, and it was established in 1948. And it is working in the industry sector. It is investing, and it is and in the long term it is getting income. So we're marathon runners, not we are not seeking for success in the short term, but we are looking for success in the long term. We have the industrial spirit, and we have such competitors in the environment, so we think that we can be successful in such a field. So for this reason, we are in the sector, and we are not mistaken. So it is slower than we expected. So because of us, because of our learning processes, the process is a little bit slow, and it's a very new, brand new sector. And from all perspectives, from the perspective of regulation and from the perspective of the new actors in this field, so of course there will be some pediatric diseases in this sector, and of course in the first 2 years we have some experiences, and these were some difficult days, but I can easily say that every month is better than the other months, so we can foresee better, we work better, and our performance is increasing day by day. So related to our journey, I would like to give some brief information. In the end of in the end of 2011, we decided to invest in wind energy, and we limited ourselves to renewable energy, and we had very small targets. We had the target of 250 megawatts, and then we said we can increase it, but of course we deterred from this decision very quickly because there are lots of advantages, possibilities, and this is like a bond flow from shareholder to shareholder. So for this reason, we may increase it because the sector is was being reshaped, and it was starting from scratch, and it was turning from public to private, and the rules were being regulated very newly. And rather than some masters in this panel, everybody was newcomers in the sector. And everybody was on the equal basis, and there was a modular growth possibility in the sector. For example, in steel investments, it is either $0 or $100 million. But in wind, this is being in time, so risk can be diminished in time. So we wanted to increase our targets. So in the year 2009, with MBF, before becoming partner with MBF, we prepared a portfolio of 800 megawatts to be licensed. Then we excluded 500 megawatts because our partner was not in this. So we started with 600 megawatts in the summer of 2009. So it is the starting point of us. So for 3 years we're in this business approximately, and in these 3 years there were some very important changes in our holding and in the market itself. And now where we are very proud to be in the sector, so I can say this comfortably, because really this is a dynamic, hard-working, responsible, and knowledgeable and proactive public administration in this business. And also there are some private investors and with marathon spirit are in the sector. So we are appearing day by day. So for this reason, in such an intellectual capital and responsibility, so when we have such a long term, we are very proud to be a part and participant in this sector, and we are very happy to be one of the companies filling this gap. Yes, we're happy. Of course, this doesn't mean that we don't have any problems in terms of regulation. I do not want to say anything, but in terms of the general structure, to tell about the general structure, and from the perspective of a businessman, of course, everybody wants to create a value before starting a business. Of course, to what extent this value is seen as a possibility by the other investors, and also licensed trade. In terms of licensed trade, for example, what is the sharing between all these? I have complaints about this as an investor. So these prices have come to a point that, for example, a good project, for example, may have a cost of $250,000 or $300,000 per megawatt, but the ones which are first aware of this possibility are luckier. But of course, bringing the know-how, gaining the money. Of course, these are the 2/3 of this business, and I make this calculation. For example, in terms of a wind project, it may have a cost of 1.1 million euro per megawatt, and the license cost may be $350,000. So let us say $2 million per megawatts, and $500,000 will be gained by the investor itself. So there is such a relation, and this is not an accurate and true relation. I think it should be changed. So this investment either this investment should be carried out by the first investors for the first licensed ones, or the investment should be higher. So this expectation, I think, will change in the coming period, because the supply and demand balance will change. There will be lots of projects in the field, but the fields to be bought will be decreased in the coming 1.5 years. So this message should be conveyed first of all. And the second point is this is a very complex work, technically very complex, complicated. So wind power plants, so we're also investing in hydroelectric power plants. This seems easier to us, but of course it has also its difficulties. When we are talking with our colleagues, for example, there are 22 separate competent authority in this field, and their authorization, their approval is needed, from the neighborhood director to national intelligence to the undersecretariat. So there are lots of things beyond the sector itself. So they are all interdependent. So for this reason, there is a time problem. So this should be in coordination. So this should be reviewed from the beginning. So of course we're not late. So we have a pool of 11,000 megawatts, and also we have an accomplished 2,000 megawatts. So we are on the starting point now. So if we have difficulty in this 11,000 megawatt and delaying investors, this will not be fruitful for Turkey and also for investors. So for this reason, there should be a new process understanding wholly, and there should be a coordination center for these works. So this is the second main message that I would like to convey to you. And also, the third point is that, again, from the perspective of an investor, also yesterday evening I told about it also. So the ones knowing Borusan will know this. For 68 years, we didn't benefit from incentives nearly. I think you will not misunderstand us. So there is an investment law now in Turkey, and in this investment law, incentive law, there is a title called strategic investments. So we attach importance to this. So this is a new chapter in the law. So the Turkish investors, I'm also commission head in TÜSİAD, the Turkish businessman association, and in terms of renewable energy investments, they are not in the scope of strategic investments. This is a loss for Turkey. I see this as a loss for Turkey. So there's a big competition in this. So Turkish investor, Turkish businessman is spending in a crazy way. So they do not need incentives. So this is not the right approach. So you're paying the money, or you're getting the service, or but this shouldn't be interpreted as that the big investors are not in need of incentives. Of course, I think this should be also brought to the agenda. And after such an evaluation of 3 points, I would like to talk about the future also. To my opinion, this 11,000 megawatt pool or potential, of course, fully accomplishing this fully is, I think, very difficult independent of time, because we have a portfolio of 450 megawatts, and we have accomplished 60 of it. And then for the other 30, there will be some investments, and then the other part is being projected at the moment. And in the coming 1.5 years, we will be starting our investments. But this wind portfolio, we would like to increase this portfolio from 450 to 650. So we're in this market as buyers, and of course there are serious number of projects being handled. So in the projects there are problems related to contribution shares or technical reasons. So So these projects may not be realized at a very serious amount. So this to achieve this 2023 goal, the new projects should be permitted by the authority. So we can first see this 11,000 megawatt, and then we can open this. If this is the approach, then Turkey may be delayed to achieve its goal. And with this fourth message, I would like to end my words. Thank you, Mr. Agah Uğur, for this valuable information. So in his speech, in brief, he told about that Borusan is new in the sector, and such strong companies like Borusan are interested in wind energy and also renewable energy, and we believe that they will be contributing to this sector. And he told about three main messages. The first message was about the wind energy investments. The first license holders of the sector, in terms of transferring their licenses, they are increasing their investment costs. And also the second point was in wind energy sector, the permits and also the time problem related to this permits create complications, he said, complex situations. He said, of course, there is primary and secondary legislation works. We have taken steps for this, but in this pool, of course, we have just realized 2,000 megawatts, so we are on the starting point, he said. So for this reason, in terms of permits, there is a need for a new regulation, he said. And the third message of him was he said that the incentive system in Turkey in terms of renewable energy resources should be sensitive to the investments, he said. So our ministry has some works with the Ministry of Economy in this perspective, so we hope to have some positive results. And lastly, he told about 2023 goal. So this target was 20,000 megawatt wind energy. So rather than the current pool, the regulatory authority, if it gives more permits, then it will contribute to achieving this goal, he said. Now we will proceed with the doyen, the master of wind energy sector. We will give the floor to Erol Demirer. So he is maybe the most important person in this panel, and he is the chairman of Demirer Holding, and he received training education in Germany, and he worked for private sector for years. And in the year 1998 he started and established the first wind power plant under Demirer Holding, and they have 105 turbines, and they are trying to have more licenses. And also in the year 2002 in Izmir, together with Enarcon firm, they established Aero Wing company. So now this is covering the local needs, and also they are exporting to 20 different countries. So he is also active in a different part of the sector. Now I would like to give the floor to Erol Demirer. Yes, the floor is yours.
Enerji sektöründe
In energy sector, to the extent my age avails, I studied electricity in university, and then I started working in the field of electricity cables. And afterwards, having worked for 14 years, then we come across with the clean energy like wind energy, and as an initiative, we have seen that the wind is resistant against the energy. We have started the measurements in wind, and afterwards we ordered our turbines. So since it was the first power plant, we want to start as a small plant, and turbines were small as well. And in order to do this, there was no guarantee for purchasing, and there was the purchase, operate, and transfer. So during that time, of course, we didn't know where we would be selling the wind energy, and the most appropriate option was to consume it within our group. So for having accomplished with the operations, we made an application for the center attachment. So we saw that the regulation was not ready, so the documents to be fulfilled, there was a need for an agreement to be made for the
Gene
fuels. And of course, the bankers did not deem appropriate to provide loans for the wind. So for that reason, we started our first investment, getting the loan within our group. And these were the first type of the turbines. So whether this will spoil the network or not, and if we have a maintenance, and if we cut off the electricity, then during the maintenance there would be an electroshock or not. So with the group for a week we carried out all our tests, and accordingly we made the acceptance. So we decided, they are convinced that they would not, the turbines will not be spoiling the network. However, when the turbines were adjusted according to the German standards, whenever there was a low voltage, they would not operate. So for that reason, we adjust them to Turkish conditions. And the second one was to build, operate, and transfer. So in the build, operate, transfer systems, there was the support from the treasury was eliminated, was abolished. So the treasury did not provide any guarantee, and they mentioned that the energy would be sold to TEDAŞ. So we had 3 different projects, but the smallest one with 10 megabytes would be tried with Bozcaada, and then when we were through with the Bozcaada, they said that the BOT, so build, operate, transfer model was not working anymore. So in the first year, it was rather hard to make a change, but in the first year, when there was a transformation with a high price, it was possible to continue in the second year, but in the market it was not possible to start in this regard for 5 years. For that reason, no new plant could be established. In 2005, a new energy law was enacted, and there was the guarantee for purchasing procurement, but this was on the basis of Turkish currency, and the average price would be provided, guarantee of purchase, so there would be a guarantee of purchase, and this would be over the average price. And the bankers said that you take the loans in foreign currency, but you're earning in Turkish currency. So how it is possible that you can repay your debt? So for that reason, we had some partnerships with other companies, and these companies provided us a purchasing guarantee if this energy is not sold during that time. So accordingly, we convinced the banks. In 2005, there was a rise in the marketing price. We did not sell according to the law, and the law said if the market is low, then according to the law, we could just sell this to the state within the scope of the law. So for that reason, the companies and investments started coming one after each other, and so for that there were so many applications that there was the concern that the network could not be able to hold all these applications, hold that load. So TEDAŞ, after some time, mentioned that there was the announcement of the applications just for 1st of November, and during that time the price for wind was good and turbine investments were very profitable, and this was a opportunity which came along after 3 years, and so there was a long queues in front of the energy market regulatory board. So for that reason, when there was a very high application for more than 1,000 megawatts, so the system was locked. So for that reason, in 2010, there was the opinion to hold a competition. So it was worse that resource from wind energy could be achieved, but thanks to this, new licenses are paid with the way. So there were 12 competitions held. The ones who lost projects, they started making their calculations according to the losses they made. So in time, the price rose and rose more. In the first and second and third competition, we were having a profit of 20%, but in the following ones, we were ranking the second from the end. So for that reason, from the last, so each cent has a big load. So the ones who may pay more for the line connections, it seemed to have a low capacity. So for example, if there is a capacity of 40, then this seemed to be 30 afterwards. So accordingly, many of them would not be realized. On the other hand, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the guarantee of purchasing was in Turkish currency, and there were problems regarding the other currencies. So with the change in the law, this changed into euro currency, so 5.5 cents per watt. So nobody sold under 1 megawatt. So with the new changes in the law, this 5.5 euro change into $7.3, and for the local domestic production, a contribution share has been identified. For example, if I could tell it for wind turbine, this would be tower, electronic and mechanical parts, and as well as installations, as well as the wings. So an incentive has been foreseen for this about 4.5, but however we had a problem that the $7.3 was lower than the market average. So for that reason, for the time being, in the market right now, it's the average is 16 kurush. So if you make a calculation for $7.3, this is about 13 kurush. So in order for you to be granted with the incentive, you just go 2 steps back and then one step forward. So if you just construct a tower, for example, you can even lose more according to the calculation of the market. So this doesn't seem to be an incentive. So the market price. So I don't want to be very pessimistic. So I don't want to say that there's nothing about it, but I can say the renewable energy spiritual support mechanism, this is what I can call it. So for the time being, according to the calculation, if you go further for the YEKTEM, for the wing and tower, if you get a local domestic contribution, you go a bit higher than the average market price, and you are just free of the estimations. But if it is only with one, then you may have a loss. But if you can do all of them, then you can be profitable. But actually, this method, since the price is under the market average, then if you start with the tower on its own, you have loss. So this 0.8 is good for wings, but if you go back, this will certainly put this work into difficulty. However, everyone can sell as they like, and the ones would be given additional contribution if they like. So this doesn't exist already yet. So for that reason, the investors are not very speedy. So 20,000 megawatt has been already targeted, but we have to be speedy. For the time being, the average is about 400 to 500 megawatts. So for that reason, it's not possible to reach our target for the moment. So in the morning session, I think Mr. Minister mentioned that the wind dealers have got advantage because they're not affected by the petroleum or oil prices. So there's no uncleanness about this energy, but our costs are always same. So when the natural gas increases, then we can easily sell it. They do not know the cost of the natural gas, but they know that they will balance the revenue with the cost. So the electricity prices are dependent on the natural gas as well. So as regards the recent years, the natural gas costs are rather low. So incentive mechanism, in terms of the incentive, the natural gas is sold rather cheaply. So this can also easily compete with wind energy. So YEKTEM, if there is no improvement in YEKTEM, development in YEKTEM, what I trust in that, I believe in the market, because the wind, for the time being, is competing with the market. So the natural gases, if they are set free, then the electricity prices go high, then there would certainly be an acceleration in wind. And let us just go back a bit back. For example, in 1996, when we went to the company, one of the great company, they had 600 personnel. Now they have 12,000 right now, Enercon company. So they grew by 10-fold. So the installed capacity, wind energy grows by 30%, and every year by 2-fold. So in each sector you cannot see such a growth in each sector. Enercon, from another example from Enercon, is that after we have met with them, 5 years after we have met them, until the time we have met them, the turbines strength was about more than 1.5 gigawatt. But now they produce more than 30 gigawatt every year. So it means that every year half of the Turkey they produce wind energy. So it seems that there's future in wind energy. If you make a calculation, for example, 4820 megawatts, if you take the air mass on Turkey, then this mass energy, there is more than this mass energy on Turkey. So for that reason, since electricity energy cannot be storage and we cannot blow the wind, for that reason the total supply, 20% of the supply can be controlled. So this is a level. For the time being, 3%, 4%, we have a 7-fold growth of annual growth of Turkey. So go further to this, the electricity storage system should change. Apart from this, as an energy resource, wind certainly has got an energy which can meet the needs of the whole world. So for that, this local resource and clean energy will deserve the place that will be in the place which it deserves. Thank you very much for your listening. Thank you very much, Mr. Erol Demirel, as the forerunner of this sector. Learning by doing, we say in English. So he certainly expressed in the best way the learning by doing part, but we can take this further by contributing to the sector, and they have contributed to the sector. In his speech, Mr. Erol expressed how the first wind power plant was established and which stages were experienced. And also, as he mentioned in last night's dinner, at the point of reaching 2023 target, he put forward his real opinion, and he mentioned that it's rather difficult to reach this target by such an approach, by such a movement. So we have to increase our capacity more and more. And of course, the existing regulations are criticized. He criticized the regulations. So on the world, the wind energy on the world, development regarding wind energy in the world has been explained by him in a brief way. Thank you very much, Mr. Erol, in this respect. Now I would like to give the word to Mr. Ceyhan Saldanlı from Bereket Enerji. Mr. Ceyhan Saldanlı, he's coming from the field of engineering, and he was educated in the Istanbul Technical University, and until 1980 he served for the state, and after 1980 in the private sector he continued his works and studies. In 1980 Elsan, in 1985 TÜMAŞ, and in 1990 IDEM, and in 1995 Bereket Enerji, and in 2002 Bereket Geothermal Energy company establishment. He participated in all these, and still he has a tenure of chairmanship of these companies. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ceyhan Saldanlı.
Teşekkür ediyorum Sayın Müsteşarım.
Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary. First of all, I would like to greet all the participants with respect, and I would like to express my content to be with you, and also I would like to extend my thanks to the organizers of this Congress. It's going very well, so we are very thankful to them also. As you know, the world, and also Turkey as well, is providing its energy from fossil resources. So what's it? Carbon. Carbon is being burned, combusted, and it is combined with the air, oxygen in the air, and then there is an energy coming out of this reaction. So this is the 80% of the energy production. So there is an interesting coincidence here. So the human being itself is providing its energy for himself from the energy combustion in the body. But then we in the nature is using non-living organisms, but we're living organisms for our body. But we are using the oxygen together. So here there's a handicap here. So this handicap, so the machines are using oxygen more than us, and they're turning this into carbon dioxide, but we do not have the machine to turn this carbon dioxide into oxygen, so we do not have a photosynthesis machine. So for this reason, scientists determined that every year oxygen is decreasing at a certain amount, so globally this paves the way for global warming. So this is an environmental problem. So this is a problem for our people, children. So to get rid of this environmental problem, the most important solution is to use and to orient to renewable energy resources. And wind is one of the most important renewable energy resources. So of course, all together we can have this transmission because mankind is needing this. But why can't we do this? Why can't we keep up with the speed? So we are trying to do it, but what are the barriers and what are the solutions? So in the short period of time spared for me, I will be talking about these. And first of all, the hardships. If we categorize the hardships, the first hardship difficulty is the business itself. So renewable energy, wind, of course, it's coming from the nature of the renewable energy itself. So what is this? Mankind is in need of energy, as Erol Bey said. We have a continuous need for energy, but we do not have continuous wind, or renewable energy resources continuously. We do not have them continuously. And also this wind energy, for example, this is a fragmented energy. And to collect this, the mechanisms that we use should be large and should be costly, expensive, of course. And so the feasibility of this work is not available. So what should we do? Of course, if from the financial perspective, of course, there's no feasibility, but from the environmental perspective, this should be done immediately. So we should involve this into this business. And also in terms of materially, of course, it may not have feasibility, it may be costly. So for this reason, we need incentives. There are some need for additional contributions, for example, carbon trade. Incentive mechanisms of the countries are established for this reason. And we need such mechanisms. So where these hardships are coming from, and are they active enough? So we can say that Turkey for long years defended the establishment of these mechanisms. We have held meetings for 20 years, and I also participated in these meetings. And in the time being, we understood the necessity of these, and the incentive mechanisms came a little bit, and we have the law, but is this law sufficient? But now, in terms of, for example, purchase guarantee, the cost is under the market price, so this is not enough then. So do we need incentive? This is another question mark. So I will talk about this in the coming part of my speech. So when we say incentive mechanism, the decision makers are not willing to give incentives, not just related to this issue. For example, related to R&D, I was reading the incentive mechanism. Technology centers were defined for R&D, and here incentives. If in the investments if you have more than 50 R&D people, you may receive incentives, and the R&D costs will be reduced from tax expenditures. Of course, we are reducing this as an expenditure. So there is no need for this defining this in the law. Of course, there are certain types of incentives, but these are not sufficient, or these are not helpful enough. And despite the developments in the recent period, we are not on a sufficient level at the moment. And also, if we need this for our people, then the procedures should be easier. And when we say procedure, for example, to make a renewable investment, for example, at about for 2 years, 3 years, you are dealing with licenses, and then when you get your license issued, for 3 years, you're dealing with construction plans, environmental plans. So these procedures should motion for renewable energy. In our country, we rightfully want this, but to qualify for a project, for example, we are making our projects not feasible, and we may ask for unfeasible contribution payments, and these resources may be nonsense for years. So for this reason, if we do so as managers, as administrators, to me, for example, if I were them, then there's no need for incentive then. So because this is feasible, this can be done. But here, of course, there's an interesting dilemma here, paradox here. So this should be solved. So risks coming from the investors are the most difficult risks to be managed. So first the calculations should be right, feasibility should be right, and then we can want something from the other ones. So if we have such high contribution payments, or we ask for a high contribution, then there is no need for incentives because it is being done. So of course, really, one of the panelists said that within the last incentive measures, when we look at these decisions, the energy investments are not supported, are not promoted. So this is a very big lack of us. So there is lots of investments in our country, but they are not being promoted. They are not taking incentives. But on the other hand, of course, when we look at the other side of the coin or medallion, of course, there is something different. So if you ask for incentives, then the contribution shares will increase. So the projects will not be feasible then. Maybe, of course, we cannot also blame the investor. We can also discuss about this. But of course, the investor has an attribute. For example, the water goes downstream. If the investor, for example, is shown this way, then he will use this way. So coming from its nature, the nature of the investor should also be thought about, and we should rehandle the regulations accordingly. So to the companies, to the people, for years, for example, we are carrying out measurements, but then we just take into account one measurement, but why are the other ones also measuring? Or in terms of financial resources or monetary resources, for example, rather than these, should we look for other attributes, properties? So when we do not look at other properties, for example, there is an application for 5,000 megawatts of wind energy production. So of course there are new regulations, and these new regulations bring new implementations, and these new implementations bring new regulations. So this is a helix. So this is very normal. But within this process, when we look at the point that we came, of course, again, when we look at the outcomes, conclusions within the regulation, within the legislation, we should review, we should revise it. So in terms of incentives, again, we should revisit our incentives, and from the beginning we should design the system, I think. Thank you for your attention. So we extend our thanks to Mr. Ceyhan. As always, again, he made a very brief and to the point and thoughtful speech. So in his speech, he told about why we need renewable energy, and he told about this in a very striking way, and he said that living things and also industry are burning oxygen to produce energy, but in the nature, this carbon dioxide is being turned into oxygen, but this doesn't exist in industry, and in this point, there are some environmental impacts and harms of the carbon fuels. So for this reason, we are in need of renewable energy. So he told about it very well. And also, of course, it may not seem feasible at the very beginning. And when we look at the types of renewable energy, they are environmentally feasible, he said. And he told about carbon trade, incentives, and with these systems, this renewable energy sector can be developed, he said. And then he told about incentive mechanisms in the beginning and at the end of his speech, and he approached this issue in a critical way. He said there are necessities for incentives, but also he told about some risks emerging from the investors, and they said that they are barriering themselves from this perspective. And the procedures in Turkey, he said they're taking time a lot, and for this reason there should be some amendments to the regulations, he said. And of course, in terms of renewable energy and in terms of the environmental risks, of course, again, because of some environmental justifications, there are some resistances to the environmental and renewable energy use, he said, but these are coming out of some lack of knowledge and also because of some interest groups. He articulated all these, and also lastly, he told about the incentive system, and he said that the possibilities, the incentive possibilities are insufficient for renewable energy resources, he said. So there are some need for new regulations for this, he said. So we're very thankful to him for this presentation. And now, of course, we told about the wind investments and renewable energy resources in Turkey. So after these three panelists, lastly, I would like to give the floor to Christian Kayer. So Mr. Kayer is the CEO of European Wind Energy Association, and for 13 years he is working in the wind energy sector, and the EVIA is headquartered in Brussels, and in Brussels They are close to the decision makers of EU, and also they have lobbying activities with these EU authorities. And from 16 different countries, it has at about 700 members, and also Turkish Wind Energy Association is also a member of European Wind Energy Association. And of course, one of the most important issues of us is the European Wind Energy Congress to be held in 2015. So we would like to host this Congress in Turkey, in Istanbul. We are a candidate for hosting this Congress. So for this reason, we are expecting your support in this perspective. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Under Secretary. And thank you very much for the invitation here. I'm very fond of being back in Istanbul, and I think it's been a very, very successful conference, and I'd like to congratulate the Turkish Wind Energy Association, with whom we've had very good cooperation with over the years. I'm going to talk a little bit about wind energy in the European markets as well, and I think maybe if you think of it in this way, what we're trying to do here, what you're trying to do every day, is to build an industry, put megawatts in the ground, create great companies. You already have created some great companies. Some of them are already exporting. And if we create a strong industry, then it also becomes very important for Turkey what kind of potential there is in the rest of the European Union, because the end result should not stop with what the minister referred to as reducing our import bill of fossil fuels. Although that is important, it should also be to create jobs and exports to the benefit of the Turkish economy. And I think from that perspective, it's also interesting to see what's going on at the European level. Now, this is basically showing you how much of the various energy reserves that is placed in the European Union. I think also the minister this morning made the same argument. Neither Turkey or the rest of Europe sits on a very large amount of the world's resources, and the ones we have are depleting. So for the European Union's perspective, that means that every citizen, from newborn to old person, pays 700 euros a year in energy imports. We're importing 54% of our energy. That share will increase as our resources deplete, and the price of the imports are very likely to go up, as also pointed by the minister. And what we're trying to sell in Brussels to the EU policy and decision makers is, rather than sending 700 euros of your citizens' money abroad to a handful of fuel exporters, we should invest that in the European economy, create jobs and exports to the benefits of our economies, and save the money on the imports. And I think that also relates very much to what the minister said in his opening today. It also addresses the three major challenges we have: an energy crisis with sustained high prices. We're certainly in the European Union in the middle of the worst crisis since the 30s, and oil is still trading at about $100, which is historically high. Once activity starts picking up globally, that price is going to go even higher. It's an environmental crisis, and of course, it's not getting easier with the financial and economic crisis in many parts of the world. Just to give you an idea of the size of the sector that you're in, it's about 40 gigawatts, the annual market, which you can see here with the blue lines. And I'm comparing it to the installed capacity of another carbon-free technology, nuclear energy, globally. And what we're basically, the level of the sector globally is that last year we installed 25% more wind energy capacity than the world has installed nuclear capacity in the last decade. It is becoming a very big industry, and I think that's a second message also to Turkey. In many markets, this industry has shown that we can scale up production extremely fast if we get the right political signals, and this is where we are in Turkey now, is trying to adjust the strong political commitment that is there and meet that with the investors' expectations. Once they meet, we can scale up production extremely fast. Now, one thing is megawatts. We try to look at electricity because that's really what it is. And to give you an idea in electricity terms of how much wind energy we're putting up in the world, on the last 3 years, somewhere between 15 and 16 nuclear reactors per year in electricity terms have been built. So what this sector has been doing the last 3 years on average is building 1.3 new nuclear reactor per month. That is quite significant economic activity and creating a lot of jobs. And just to give you an idea about a wind turbine is quite small, but you add them all together, it's a significant amount of power that comes online, equivalent to the power production of 1.3 new nuclear reactors per month. The European Union is, this is the share of renewable electricity in the European energy mix. We went from 14% around 2000. We are around 21% in the year 2010. In 2001, the European Union adopted a directive that set the target of 21% in 2010 of electricity from renewables, and that has been met. In 2009, a binding target was set to have 20% of overall energy, not only electricity, all energy coming from renewables by 2020. And that means that we actually, for electricity alone, we need to increase the share of renewable electricity from about 21% now to 34% in 2020, because the target is on energy. In order to get 20% energy, we need a third of our electricity to come from renewables. And this is the directive that was passed in 2009 and which very much drives investments in the 27 member states of the European Union. This shows what we have. Basically, that's the increase, and this explains why. The percentages you see on top of these bars are the share of new capacity that was renewable. 71% in 2011 of all new capacity installed in the European Union was from renewables. It has mainly been gas, which are the yellow bars, if we look back to 95, and wind, the blue bars, and in the last couple of years, solar, PV, a lot of investments has gone into that as well. But this is basically the reason for why the share has increased. In the European Union, we were at 94 gigawatts at the end of 2011. We have just a month ago, or a month and a half ago, passed 100 gigawatts. We had a little celebration of that in Brussels. And to give you an idea about what 100 gigawatts of wind power can produce, if that amount of electricity from the 100 gigawatts that are installed in the 27 member states should have been produced with coal, it would require the burning of 72 million tons of coal. And if you were going to fit that amount of coal into a trains, you would need 750,000 train wagons full of coal to meet the production with coal that the wind electricity builds. That train would be 11,500 kilometers long, or stretch from Brussels to Buenos Aires in Argentina, if the wind electricity should have been produced with coal. So it's a significant amount of power, although 6.5% of the European Union's electricity, which comes from wind, does not sound of much, but it does avoid a lot of fuel cost, a lot of carbon emissions. These are the installed capacities in Europe. Turkey at the end of 2012 were about 1,800 megawatts. We have a lot of expectations. You have a lot of expectations for the Turkish market, and I think it's clear that all my members, of which many of them are also, if not all of them, members of the Turkish Association, see Turkey as a very, very promising market. We're about 500 megawatts this year, perhaps, hopefully a bit more next year. It seems to be growing stably. And there are not many of those markets left at that level. 500 to 800 megawatts per year is a very decent market, and could we just get it a little bit higher, up at the level that is needed to reach the 2023 target of 20 gigawatts, that would really spark some investor interest, and we could get things going faster as well. As I said, 6.3% of European Union's electricity comes from wind energy currently. There are big differences. Denmark gets more than a quarter of its electricity from wind. Spain, Portugal, 15%, and large economy like Germany gets 10% of its electricity from wind. As I said, the legal framework at the European level is this directive that was passed in 2009, and it deals with exactly the same issues that we are dealing with in the Turkish market. The way the legislation is put together is that every single member state has a target that it needs to reach. They're binding, meaning that you can actually take a member state to court if it doesn't meet these targets. It stipulates, but leaves it to the member states to put in place whatever support mechanisms is needed to meet the targets. And then it has very important stipulations on grids and including priority access and guaranteed access. And then it has a section also on streamlined administrative procedures and a reference to what is called a one-stop shop. It was mentioned earlier today that I think it was 21 different authorities that were needed to be consulted sometimes to get a project going in Turkey. We have had in many European countries exactly the same problem. The worst case I heard was 41 different authorities, including the national television, who had a de facto veto on any wind energy project that was going to go up. So a one-stop shop, centralizing that, as it was suggested by a previous speaker, would be a very, very good thing, and that's also something that's referred to in this legislation. Each member state of the European Union has a national action plan, and it needs to communicate to the European Commission whether it's on track to meet these targets. And it has proven a very, very effective framework. This is basically, if you take all those action plans, put them together, what the member states are saying they're going to do for wind, we're going to go from having about 6.5% of our electricity from wind this year to 14% of electricity in 2020, of which 4% of that would be from offshore wind. These are not our figures. These are the figures that the 27 member states have told the Commission that they will build in terms of wind energy in order to meet the renewable targets. And that's equal to 213 gigawatts in 2020. As I said, we're currently at about 100, just a little bit above. In terms of total investments, this decade, almost 200 billion euros needs to be invested in wind energy to meet those targets. Of that, about 34% offshore wind. And this is excluding infrastructure. These are just investment costs of turbines. In the next decade, we're talking 257 billion if we're meeting the targets that the European Wind Energy Association has set for that period. Turkey is a key partner for the European industry, and this is what I was trying to allude to before. I think one of the most important things for us is to build up the industry. And I would say that the optimism that I sense in the Turkish market and in this country and at this conference comes at a very, very good time. I don't think it comes as a surprise to many that 2013 will be a very, very difficult year in the global wind energy sector. The United States market is going to collapse. The Chinese market has problems in terms of getting turbines connected to the grid. Many of the southern European countries face problems because of the financial crisis. And of course, that's a lot of bad things for a global industry. but nothing is so bad that it's not good for something. So in terms of timing of a Turkish market that are set out to increase, this global structure actually means that that you might be at a time where you want to expand, where the global market is not very healthy, and that also means that costs are lower. So it might not be a bad thing for a country to be slightly against the general trend. If you go 2.5 years back in time, investors couldn't, if they called a wind turbine manufacturer, they were told, we'll deliver some turbines to you in 3 years, and we would like 25% down payment now. That's not the case anymore, so it's not bad timing, 2013. What's absolutely essential is that we keep trade free and fair. When you're in an economic crisis, trade barriers tend to rise. There are some local content requirements around the world, including in Turkey. Over the long term, I don't think that helps our industry. I think most of the companies in this world are talking about unfair competition in relation to China, which is a giant. I don't think that Chinese turbine manufacturers or South Korean manufacturers or future Turkish wind turbine manufacturers are the biggest threat for EU-based manufacturers. The ones we have to compete with is electricity from gas and coal and nuclear and other renewables. And in order to keep our cost competitiveness, we need competition and we need trade to flow freely. And I think that's a very important point to make. Thank you once again very much for inviting me to this conference, and all the best for the rest of this conference. And as I alluded to this morning, we will make a decision, or my board will make a decision on 12th of December about the conference in 2015. Let me assure you that it is absolutely perfectly clear, if it wasn't yesterday, then here today after the opening session, that the Turkish wind industry, but also the political establishment, wants to have the conference coming here to Istanbul. This is clear. It will be communicated further. They already know that, but I have never had such strong commitment from the whole sector, including the association, including the political establishment, and the authorities for having the conference. So I'm not the one who's made the decision, so I can say good luck on the 12th of September as well, and I hope to be able to see you once again very soon in Istanbul. Thank you very much.
Sayın Kajer'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz bu sonuç.
For this presentation. And lastly, he has just mentioned that 2015 Istanbul conference. He mentioned that he provides his support coming from yesterday as well as from today, because coming from the political structure as well, and he mentioned about the impact of the political structure and as well as from the investors and participants, and he also mentioned about his good wishes to qualify for this conference to be held in Turkey, but he also referred to the minister's speech this morning, saying that wind energy is not only decreasing, mitigating the dependency of the dependency to other fossil fuels, but there's also certainly serious contributions to the economy as well as to environment, and the hydrocarbon fuels, dependence on hydrocarbon fuels would be mitigated, and the import of hydrocarbon resources costs 700 euros per person every year. He mentioned this, and afterwards he mentioned about how the wind energy would be processed, and every year there is 40 gigawatt growth on the world every year. He mentioned about this, and in terms of carbon emissions, he made a comparison with nuclear energy as well as the renewable energy, and there's a parallelism in this respect. And at this point, the growth in wind energy on annual basis, when compared with nuclear energy, with the growth of nuclear in 10 years, there is 25% of growth in wind energy sector. So this has been already put forward by him. And the European Union 2020 target has been mentioned, and in 2020 European Union, not only in terms of production of electricity, but the renewable share is targeted to be 20%, but is targeted to be by 20% increased. And again, between the coal and wind energy, he provided us an example, and 6.3% of European energy is derived from wind energy. If this has been derived from coal, there would be a line of train extending from Brussels to Buenos Aires, and he put forward this in an impressive way. And he also mentioned about the Turkish market for the investors, although it is very important for the foreign investors, annually 400 to 500 megawatt realization share, as mentioned by other panelists or speakers, could be increased to 8 to 1,000 megawatts in the upcoming years. He also mentioned about this. And of course, lastly, on the world, once again, in terms of economic crisis, what has been experienced are negative, and there are some negativities experienced. But however, Turkey has a reverse trend compared to these negativities. Thank you very much, Mr. Kayar, for your speech. There is a deviation of 10 minutes, which could be deemed appropriate, so we can just proceed with the Q&A session. We would like to have these questions from the audience. Please ask your questions if you would like to address your questions. I think it's rather difficult to be the first to address the first question. This is what I see. So certainly our panelists provided really good information. So the floor is yours.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you, first of all. My name is Tuna Güven from Borusan MBV Energy. So I have a question to Mr. Erol. So 500 kilowatt turbines you said. So I think this was 10 years ago. So these were activated 10 years ago. So, of course, the innovation of them may be on the agenda. So what are you thinking about this? So in terms of 500 megawatt, are you thinking about having a higher capacity? So in terms of turbines, we have installed these turbines for 14 years, and there is no problem with them. And in Germany, they name it repowering because there is no space. They change it with larger turbines, but we are not in such a hurry. We have substitute power. So for this reason, there is no cost for this. We may add one. If there is, for example, a problem with one turbine, we can use the other substitute. So we do not have any space problem. So for this reason, they are being operated. So they are our first. So for this reason, we cannot stop them. And also, when consuming energy, Mr. Ceyhan said, he said that we're producing carbon dioxide. So in figures, 1 gigawatt power plant produces the carbon dioxide produced by 10 people. Hello, I have a question to Mr. Demirel. In terms of nuclear power plants, there are some reservations. I have read your articles before. So what is your opinion? So there's an interesting situation. So nuclear will not have a negative influence on wind energy. I think it will influence it in a positive way. It may have more positive impact than YEKTEM because there is a high tariff for nuclear. So if the general energy tariffs will be higher, then our wind energy will be more valuable. Because if there is, for example, higher investment, the investors may refrain from having these power plants. Of course, there is 8 to 9 years for operation, and Turkey will grow in this time. So for this reason, when we were installing the ones in Bozcaada, build, operate, transfer model was more active. So I'm not expecting a striking impact, but there may be an impact of nuclear. But economically, it will have a positive impact. I foresee a positive impact if there will be a nuclear energy production. So thank you, Mr. Undersecretary, first of all. Of course, we witnessed a very good conference here, and there was full excitement. And our minister, the representatives of the ministry, and the representatives of EMRA, this lasted for 2 hours. But now we are talking about bureaucracy. Now we are not. We do not have representatives from the ministry and administrative side, but you chaired this session, so you are representing bureaucracy and politics here. So my question is this: so in Turkey, wind energy, the most important barrier in front of wind energy sector is the cost-based electricity, lack of cost-based electricity tariff. So we all know that before this was a secret information, but now this is declared, and press, we're following the press also. You're also talking about this, private sector is also saying this. In Turkey, natural gas is being subsidized. So average natural gas purchase of Turkey is at about $500, but the electricity producers use it at the rate of $360, and also there are some build, operate, transfer power plants, and there is a subsidy over them. So if this was left free or liberal, if there is not such a subsidy, so then in the market the natural gas prices will be 20 or 13 dollar cents. So with local contribution, if this was the case, we would be talking about additions of 0.8 or 0.6 dollar cents. Of course, none of the investors or turbine manufacturers are not voluntary to install such detailed and delicate work. So for this reason, in such an imbalance, by subsidizing the natural balance and because of the lacking of subsidizing of native resources, and the licensing process will take 12 years. So in this 10 to 12 years, wind sector will reach 2,000 megawatts. So this cannot be seen as success. So for this reason, the political authority here, within this perspective, can you think about lifting this subsidy, or if there will be a subsidy, will the natural resources or the native resources be also subsidized? Thank you for this question. In this question, I think there is. I think this question is addressed to me because also I am the chairman of CEO of. I am a member of the executive board of BOTAŞ also. of course, the openings of the congresses are very interesting, exciting, but then the sessions, like the rivers going onto deserts, become less excited. But of course, there's a serious situation. At this time of the day, there is an interest in this conference. We have a sufficient crowd here. Of course, I agree with your criticism. So when we look at our targets that we would like to achieve, of course, we cannot give a good point to ourselves. But when we look at the steps taken and the way gone, this is not something unimportant. So the share of private sector is now 57%. This is very important. Of course, BOTAŞ is the bad boy of the energy sector. It seems so. So everybody is happy to see it as the source of evil. But of course, I think BOTAŞ or natural gas market do not deserve this. Of course, there is a reality of subsidy, lifting this and going to liberalization. There is an improvement in this area. But of course, in its current situation, BOTAŞ is having the burden of the irregularities in the energy market. Of course, this irregularity is not coming from itself only, but also from the sector itself. Of course, when you seek for a responsible, you can find BOTAŞ, of course. But I agree with your criticism. But of course, as you all know about the law 4646, for example, the draft law is prepared by the ministry, and it was open to the opinion of the private sector in this year or in the first months of the next year. This law will be enacted, and in the natural gas market, by increasing liberalization, the targets in 4646 can be realized so that this abnormality can be solved, I think. So I agree with your criticism, yes. So I think I misunderstood. So of course, BOTAŞ is not the reason, but of course, natural gas, for subsidizing natural gas, the bureaucracy may have sound grounds, but of course there must be an explanation for this. But I say this, so natural gas is being subsidized like this, but local resources cannot appear on the market for this reason. For example, $10 cent electric cost of Turkey. But when you give $7 cent incentive, then the local resources are being hindered. So when you give natural gas for $0 cent, will you give $3.50 cents to the natural resources or local resources? Of course, BOTAŞ is not the reason for this. So I just want to make a statement. Of course, Mr. Ceyhan said that incentives are needed, but sometimes they may be unnecessary. So in an interesting way, he underlined this. So from a wrong implementation to right implementation, this transition from a wrong to right implementation, this doesn't happen by night. So for this reason, we are in the way. We are improving the situation. Murat Onuk, AF Consult. So related to local production, I have a question to Mr. Agah because Mr. Erol told about it a lot. So as one of the founders of Vestas, lots of farmers, butchers, and also tourism people asked turbines from me, and at that time I had an opinion when Borusan will be willing in manufacturing these. So you are in wind sector, so do you have an intention to manufacture wind turbines? So do you have any efforts for this? So I would prefer Botash question. So of course, this is a very important question. So we have interviewed with a couple of firms. They visited us for joint investment. So the foreign technology owners. But as the industry, so we do not want to be in a short-term business. So there is not a need for this. For example, a foreign manufacturer, for example, if they come to Turkey, they do not want anything from us. They to make the entrance easier for a couple of years, the local partner is contributing, of course, to open the way for, pave the way for the investment. But in every business that we are running, we are thinking of a partnership that will last for 20, 30 years. So for this reason, retrospectively, we think that this would not be good. Of course, there is an economic basis for this also, because your brand, if you do not own the brand, then if the export potential is limited by your partner company, because the other production centers are also in the business, so if you are used as an intermediary to grow in the Turkish market, then the partner relations are very hard. So for this reason, we do not deem this appropriate as a strategic partnership. So Agah Bey, you're here, so we will ask you more questions. So in terms of producing new turbines, this requires long process, the certification, infrastructure. These require serious preparations. But in Europe, there are lots of companies in hardships. So one of them can be bought. And in Turkey, you can produce your own turbine, I think. So. You can transfer a company from abroad, and its technology can be transferred to Turkey. So I do not want to intervene into your business, but we can chat with you one time. Aydın Altınordu. So I was going to ask the question asked by Murat Unoğlu. So I respect your opinion in terms of manufacturing wind turbines, but with Borusan brand, with license and investor, the license bringing or know-how bringing company to you, and a Turkish holding, for example, can manufacture with its own brand. So how do you see such a model? Of course, this model is a little bit different. So then most of the limits I told about is being lifted. So first of all, we should take into account our confidence, and it is being turned into a business evaluation issue. So for this reason, in our current portfolio, the workload, and when we look at the opportunities and threats, there are lots, believe me. So we cannot open, we cannot deal with them. So for this reason, we have businesses and they are different profit centers. As holding, we cannot bring them money, and also our managers are coming with good projects, but till 2015 is a very retarded date. But because of our current situation, this won't happen. Of course, I have colleagues in large holdings, so I can transfer your opinion to them. I can convey your message to them also. Thank you. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the audience for your interest. And we have a half an hour delay, but we had a productive Q&A session. And we are very thankful to the panelists also for their valuable presentations and valuable experiences. And so we have the certificate of participation prepared by TWEC, and I would like to say good evening to you also. So the ones to participate in gala dinner tonight, please take your invitations from TWEC stand.